One, two, three. Three count four.
Hello, I am Be Better Gamer. Welcome to Be Better Gamer Wrestling, the channel dedicated to wrestling video games fueled by my passion, love, and obsession for them. I am playing WWF No Mercy today. I am finishing my Let's Play series for the WWF Tag Team Championship. It's been a long time, but I'm finally ending this thing, and I'm going to be playing as Grandmaster Sexay and Scotty Too Hottie, Too Cool, and they will be the last Tag Team Championship Let's Play I do, at least for now, just to finish off this run. It's been a long road, like I said before, so thank you for clicking on this video. Thank you for watching. If you haven't seen my videos before, if you haven't seen my Let's Plays before, I like to talk about the historical context of what was going on around the time that WWF No Mercy was out. Specifically, I like to focus on like November of 99 to 2001, you know, right after WrestleMania 2000 and WWF No Mercy. And I went with Too Cool as the final team to do for the tag team series because, I mean, if you want to talk about the Attitude Era, one of the things that I think is very particular about the Attitude Era is there was so many things that were very specific to that time, things that could probably only happen at that time. And I think the success and the rise of Too Cool, it was like almost overnight they became one of the most popular acts in the company. And I want to look at that. I want to look at why that was, why it was so sudden and yet so brief, and talk about all those things. But you know, Let's Play itself, and here I go, losing to Taka Michinoku right away. I'm gonna be losing a lot in this path. You know, I've talked about it quite a bit in my Let's Play videos over the course of this specific series. I have a very love-hate relationship with the tag team championship path, but this one I have to lose a whole bunch. There I go. The easiest way for me to lose that match was since there was no DQ, was to do a strong grapple, and that I knew that Taka could counter it. Fortunately, I know that he would be able to counter my Hurricanrana into a pin, and then you just hold down the control stick, and then there you go. You can lose via pin easily because when you hold down the control stick, you won't kick out, and the opponent will win automatically. This tag match, I have to lose as well, but this tag match has DQ, so here you see me running out, getting a bottle of water, the illegal bottle of water, to hit Eddie Guerrero, and the range on it is not that great. I gotta swing. I was talking about this on my stream, actually. I was like, you know, I rarely, if ever, go for the weapons. There's Eddie Guerrero taking the bottle of water away from me. This is kind of hilarious. This is I imagine I was very frustrated trying to hit him with this bottle of water because I don't like using weapons in the game because of that fact, because of like sometimes you'll pull out a bottle of water or a bouquet of roses, you know, things that just don't make sense to pull out. Like I understand they were situational at some points. You know, the bouquet of roses would have like a lead pipe hidden in between them, but it was very situational. It would happen like once. Whereas a bottle of water, that was just something Triple H entered with. I don't think I ever saw him use like a loaded bottle of water, but whatever. I'm spending too much time talking about the the silly weapons, and then Eddie Guerrero's blocking it again. Oh my goodness. That could be sometimes a frustrating thing when you need to lose the match and you're just swinging weapons around like a mad person. I'm trying to run around the ring to get good distance. Oh my, he blocks it again. I was probably super frustrated when this was happening, and I say probably because I recorded this gameplay footage sometime in 2017. There I go. I finally get the DQ. That's a big bottle of water, by the way. That's like the extra size bottle of water. I recorded the gameplay footage for this sometime in 2017 and never got around to doing the Let's Plays. Obviously, that was a different time. I had a full-time day job that I don't have anymore, that I left to work on this channel full-time so that I could bring you more content at a faster rate with all the responsibilities I had last year with the full-time job, with being a dad, with being a husband. I couldn't work on my channel as I wanted to, so the tag team championship got put on a hiatus until I started playing it recently. And as I started getting back into making the Let's Plays, I lost all my WWF No Mercy data on cartridge. I made a video about it. You can check it on my channel. So, good thing I recorded the video footage beforehand last year, with the intention of recording the audio right away, and obviously I didn't get to it. But I won't remember a lot of the stuff that went on in this, championship run. I couldn't tell you specific moments. I have to just kind of watch it as I record the audio for it all over again. And looking back on everything that I did in No Mercy leading up to this point, I really did lose a lot. At first, when I lost my WWF No Mercy data, I didn't think it was that bad. I was like, whatever. I've deleted my data purposefully multiple times over the years. But when it came to like needing that footage, needing that data to further work on my channel, it kind of set me back a little bit. So, that's why this video took a little bit to come out also, because I've been trying to do some other stuff with the channel with No Mercy to, more calls, more videos, but I have to unlock everything all over again. So I'm glad that I'm finally putting the Tag Team Championship Let's Play series to rest. But at the same time, I know I'm gonna have to do it all over again. So I'll probably just play the championship mode all over again on stream. And it's gonna be tough, because I think I can honestly say, out of all the championship paths, the Tag Team Championship path is probably my least favorite. Maybe my least favorite with the Hardcore Championship path. And I only say the Hardcore Championship path because the Hardcore Championship path, there's so many different paths, so it's very tedious. So you are replaying a lot more. You're playing a lot more of the same matches spread out across the different runs, so it bleeds in together. I know a lot of the paths do that as well, but it just seems like a little too much with the hardcore championship path. And the tag team championship path, I like when I play WCW Revenge and I choose tag team championship and I just play 10 tag team matches in a row. It takes forever. To get through it. It takes like 2 hours, a single run of the tag team. But it's fun because it's just non-stop tag team matches. And I like that. And I wish the tag team championship path here in No Mercy was non-stop tag team matches. But it's not. There's a lot of times, and even in this episode, it's not too much in this path that I chose with Too Cool. But there are some moments where I do singles or a triple threat, or I gotta interfere. And I get it. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to do storylines, but they're not really emulating any storyline like, let's say, the WWF Championship path does, where they emulate, The Rock's feud with Triple H, or Mick Foley's feud with Triple H, or just a general build-up of WrestleMania, or Jericho's arrival in the company and things like that. You don't really see them. The closest they try to do is they try to emulate the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys, but that's like in the very first path you do. And then after that, it's just kind of all over the place. It would have been interesting to see them do a path modeled after Too Cool, because I think Too Cool had a very interesting journey in the year 2000, right around, right when this game came out. They were sort of at the tail end of their popularity, and a lot of that had to do with Rikishi's heel turn. But going into 2000, and for most of it, Too Cool were one of the most popular acts. They were at the top of the card in a lot of ways because of the feuds they were involved in. And even though they didn't have like a long run with the titles, they only won the WWF Tag Team Championship once by beating Edge and Christian as part of their feud with Edge and Christian leading into King of the Ring. But they still, I think, made an impact that year that sort of like helped define what that year was for WWF, and you can't really talk about the year 2000 without talking about, or at least briefly mentioning, Too Cool, because they did a lot and they tied into a lot of the big changes that were happening with WWE in general. looking back, go back to 1999, and Brian Christopher and Scott Taylor were already a tag team. They were called Too Much. And I remember playing WrestleMania 2000. And this is how you know how quickly things can change in a year. I remember when I got WrestleMania 2000 and I was looking through the roster and I saw Scotty, he wasn't Scotty Too Hottie, he was Scott Taylor. He was too hot, Scott Taylor, and Brian Christopher was too sexy, Brian Christopher, and they were too much. And I remember thinking, oh man, I'm never going to play as these guys. I'm never going to play as Too Much. And then you go through Road to WrestleMania and you have to play them in like so many Sunday Night Heat matches. It's like them and the Headbangers are constantly fighting. And that's where they were. They were just, lower card. They had a few cute feuds involving Jerry Lawler because Brian Christopher is the real life son of Jerry Lawler. And they were very coy about that. They made a lot of like subtle references to it to make you think like, oh, is that his like real son or is that his fake son? And for even a while, I didn't really know for sure until, I officially was able to look it up a few years later and like, oh, that really was his son. Because the way they played it out, it always made you question whether or not they were telling the truth. But they wouldn't transform into Too Cool like how is in this game until June of 99. They actually made their debut as Too Cool on Sunday Night Heat, and it was a complete change. Too Much, they were these like metrosexual, if you will, kind of, guys who they would ride scooters together, and it's like, well, are they in a relationship? Are they like, are they boyfriend and boyfriend? Like they very much like walk that line of everything they did. They're walking around saying like, oh, I'm really sexy and you're really hot, we're too much for everyone. But then like it's also like kind of underneath that, it's almost like they were saying like, oh, you're hot and I'm hot and we should like go be hot together, in a relationship. But WWE never took it that far with them. We would get something similar to this Too Much really a few years later with Chuck Palumbo and Billy Gunn when they would have their gimmick. It was very reminiscent of what Brian Christopher and Scott Taylor, I think, were doing with Too Much. But when they transferred over, when they became Too Cool, this is interesting. I'm fighting Rikishi and Steven Richards. This would be Big Show and Rikishi if Big Show was still in the game, because they insert Richards whenever they want Big Show. This is really funny that I'm facing Rikishi, considering Rikishi is the third member of Too Cool. And Rikishi didn't join Too Cool right away because Rikishi himself was kind of bouncing around with all these different gimmicks in 99. He was the Sultan and things like that previously before that. And then he was just like Rikishi Fatu and like Rikishi from the streets and things like that. And when Too Cool transformed, they were still kind of a heel tag team. But they were so goofy, I think, when they first came out that people couldn't take them seriously either way. It's like, okay, well, they're supposed to be bad, but they're actually kind of funny and silly, and they're not winning, they're not doing anything to have them go over as super baby faces or super heels. So we're just gonna go along with it and clap and dance with them, because I think the thing that made Brian Christopher and Scott Taylor work as Too Cool more so than Too Much was that they were allowed to be silly and go all the way with something that they probably felt more comfortable doing than with Too Much. Too Much almost seemed like very put on, very much characters that, trying to draw attention. Gut-wrench powerbomb there onto Rikishi. Only possible with the power of a special. Pretty impressive from Brian Christopher. Whereas Too Cool, you could tell like this was a very tongue-in-cheek gimmick. Obviously, it's two white guys, dancing to hip hop, but they're not even dancing to hip hop because their music was more sort of like light dance music. I would even say it was very much hip hop, but they dressed sort of in like that hip hop attire. But it was very like you couldn't take it. It was like, yeah, okay, there's no way. Like you go to Harlem dressed like this, no one's gonna take you seriously. And I think they embraced that. That if you look at them, it wasn't supposed to be taken seriously. It was kind of a joke. And I think that's why fans responded to it, because it was funny, it was lighthearted, it was tame. It wasn't trying to push the envelope like Too Much was. Too Much was like borderline trying to push the envelope, but they didn't really commit, I think, to that story, to that character, to even get it that far, where it did seem like, oh, this is like an edgy thing. They got a lot edgier with, Billy and Chuck, I think, than they did with Too Much. Whereas Too Cool, again, it wasn't trying to be edgy, like, oh, look at these white guys pretending to be hip hop. They got a lot more edgier when John Cena did it, obviously. He had his, white rapper gimmick. Too Cool, they didn't come out, they didn't start rapping, they were dancing, and again, they were doing like the silly breakdance moves, and I think that was just entertaining to get behind, and people grabbed onto it. But it wasn't really until Rikishi joined that I think everyone just kind of took notice and like, oh, this is a thing now, because Rikishi added I wouldn't say a complete straight man, like a complete serious side to it, because he would dance, but it definitely started out as sort of like an odd couple kind of thing. It's like, here's Rikishi talking about, I'm from the streets and I'm gonna beat anyone up who's in my way, and this is a different Rikishi Fatu. And he's had that like weird tag match where he teamed with Viscera. He was just trying to find his place, and he teams up with Too Cool, and then they have a match, they win, and then right as Rikishi is about to leave, they're like, no, where are you going? You should dance with us, you should hang with us. And it was just really funny to see this massive powerful figure like Rikishi dancing in the middle of the ring, and of course wearing his outfit where his butt cheeks are hanging out, and he's shaking his butt and he's dancing, and you got Scotty 2 Hotty. It was just so over the top, so ridiculous, that it just became so fun to watch so quickly. And I think that dynamic of Rikishi sort of grounded it a little bit. If it was just going to be Scotty 2 Hotty and Brian Christopher, then they were just going to come out, they were just going to dance, they were going to be silly, and no one was going to take them seriously, because, they lost a lot still. It's not like their win record went up. But now that you have Rikishi, and Rikishi is actually a legitimate threat. Rikishi can actually take people out, and even though it opens up a whole nother side of his personality where he's dancing, he's doing silly stuff, you're not laughing at Rikishi as much as you're laughing at Brian Christopher and Scotty 2 Hotty. So I think it helped grounded them as a unit, and that's probably one of the reasons why they took off. I think another reason why they took off is because they were able to work that newfound success with their gimmick, with their chemistry with Rikishi, and naturally work it into a lot of the stuff that was already happening in WWE. I think the first big thing really is the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble 2000. They just started teaming up, and you have the moment where Rikishi's in the ring. And was it Scotty that came out first? That Scotty was already in the ring, or Brian was already in the ring? I forget who. One of them was already in the ring, and then Rikishi's clearing everyone out, and it's just him and Scotty, let's say. And then the numbers count down, the music hits, and it's Brian Christopher, and he's like, no, we're buddies now. Here. Put on the glasses, because the whole glasses thing was a thing where, it started out that Rikishi didn't want to dance. He didn't want to be serious, but once the glasses were put on, he sort of transformed, and he would dance, and it was funny. And here they are in the middle of the Royal Rumble. They go into their whole bit where they do the dance, and Rikishi shaking his butt, and then Rikishi goes and he double eliminates them anyway. And it's funny, but it was like playful and funny. And again, it just shows that Rikishi, he's here to have fun with Too Cool, but also, he's got his eye on the prize. He would like to win the Royal Rumble. And, I talked about it in the Rikishi Let's Play, where I felt like Rikishi had a lot of potential to be a main event player in WWE, but the whole running over Austin storyline kind of ruined that. And I'll talk about that more in regards to Too Cool, because that kind of killed Too Cool's popularity too, in a way, because without Rikishi, it was all lost. But that moment, the Royal Rumble, I think that really showed how popular they were becoming in such a short amount of time, because it wasn't even, in Survivor Series 99, Too Cool, and Survivor Series 99 was actually the pay-per-view that Stone Cold got hit by a car. He got run over by a car. But the Hollies and Too Cool were in a tag team match against Edge and Christian and the Hardys. And again, Too Cool was technically bad guys at this point. They were technically a heel team, but they weren't, they weren't really doing anything, that much heelish. I would say they were even less heelish than they were. I guess the whole heel aspect was like, here's these two white guys dancing to hip hop and doing breakdance moves. Let's boo them because they're such jerks, right? And it was like, but they weren't cheating as much. They weren't, doing anything. A lot of their moves were getting reactions to the crowd. Like even now, what I'm doing with Scotty Too Hottie, where I'm not playing a Scotty Too Hottie, but Scotty Too Hottie is doing his taunt. It's like everything they did was just kind of funny and silly. Like, why would you put on goggles before you do a leg drop? Why do you have to dance after every single move? And like, I guess that's why people didn't want to boo him. They wanted to cheer him because they were like, you guys, you're taking too much time dancing when you should be actually wrestling. And it was just funny. But in Armageddon 99, they were involved in a battle royal, and they still weren't with Rikishi. So here we go, Royal Rumble, and then now between Armageddon and Royal Rumble, that's where their partnership started happening. And if you look at even in the Royal Rumble, that reaction they had, and that's also, I think, one of the really early moments where you see it a lot now in the Royal Rumble. You see a lot of these like spots in the Royal Rumble were like comedy spots where it has nothing to do with wrestling. Most recently this past Royal Rumble, Elias came out. He was playing his guitar. How convenient that there was time for him to play his guitar during the Royal Rumble. But you see spots like that all the time now, and I feel like that was one of the earlier spots that, I'm trying to think. I can't really think of a moment maybe before that. There probably was, but I'm just having a hard time thinking of a moment before the Too Cool spot where they took a time in the Royal Rumble to do a comedy bit like that had nothing to do with wrestling. And now they do it all the time. Sometimes they do it, 2-3 times in a Royal Rumble match. And then after that, I think what also helped Too Cool's rise is that immediately after that, the Radicals showed up on Raw. And this is important because this led to one of the reasons why I wanted to do this Let's Play is really based on this Raw match that I'm about to talk about. But the Radicals showed up on Raw, and then the next SmackDown, they had to wrestle for contracts. They ended up losing all their matches because, McMahon-Helmsley era. Triple H and DX, they beat the newcomers pretty much, easily. I mean, they cheat to win, so it's like justified, but each member of the Radical loses, and actually Eddie Guerrero ends up hurting his arm in a tag match. Him and Saturn were taking on the New Age Outlaws, and Eddie Guerrero hurt his arm. But this would lead to the following Raw, okay? So now we're 2 weeks after Royal Rumble, and the show opens up with the Radicals coming back out, saying, they had an opportunity to make an impact and be a part of WWF, but they lost, so now they're going to have to leave, and they feel bad about it, but they want to thank Cactus Jack, because Cactus Jack was the one who helped give them the shot for coming into WWF. And that's really interesting that they went in that direction because, Cactus Jack, he was in WCW, so it's really interesting that they went with the whole Cactus Jack thing. And so Cactus Jack comes out, and right before Cactus Jack can really say anything to the Radicals, Triple H comes out. Triple H comes out with Stephanie, poking at Cactus Jack that he beat him, or I beat you at Royal Rumble, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I want to end this. I want to end you, Mick. I want to end you, Cactus. So, at No Way Out, we're going to have one more match, and that's it. And it's going to be over. It's going to be done. And this basically sets up another historic match between the Cactus Jack Triple H feud, which was the Hell in a Cell match at No Way Out. Triple H told Cactus Jack, you can have any match you want, just can't be any weapons involved. No barbed wire, sticks, nothing. And then Cactus Jack says, alright, well, we'll do Hell in a Cell. It's like completely setting up Triple H. Here we go. So we got one of the coolest things I think about WWF No Mercy is the post-celebration that only a few characters have. And surprise, surprise, they gave it to Too Cool. And it's the most in-depth one, I think. I mean, all their animations, all their dances are just specifically for this. You have to win a match with Too Cool in order to get this win animation where Rikishi comes out and they do a dance. I mean, you could also win with any one of them individually, and this dance will still unlock. But I think it's also really funny because I just beat Rikishi and Steven Richards, but now here I am dancing with Rikishi and Too Cool. But how crazy is that? That's how you know how popular they were. I talked about in my Hardys tag team Let's Play that I feel like No Mercy really took a lot of what the Hardy Boys were doing and the popularity between the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian. But and that's why we got the ladder match, and that's why it was called No Mercy, going off of their ladder match in '99. But here's another tag team that had a sort of a big influence on what they did in the game, because there's so much stuff, so much unique specific stuff for Too Cool. Their taunts, the post-match celebration, Kane, Stone Cold, The Rock, and I think that's it. I think those are the only other 3 characters that have a post-match celebration. In WrestleMania 2000, everyone had full entrances. We don't get full entrances in WWF No Mercy, but we do get some post-match celebrations that were similar to the full entrances. But like, how telling is that they chose Too Cool as one of them? That's how you knew they were very popular. And they make all these animations specifically for that dance at the end, because that dance became synonymous to what they were doing. Now here I go, I gotta lose this match again, so I'm getting another another object from the stands. Here we got the nightstick, because people in the stands carry nightsticks. It's just the weapons get me so they bug me so much in this game. But yeah, so going back to that Raw, so basically Triple H issues the challenge, Cactus Jack accepts it. It's now going to be Hell in a Cell, career versus title. We all know how that ends, but the one big thing is that Triple H basically walks to the ring, and as he's about to get into the ring, he basically tells the Radicals, you have 2 choices. You can either get out, or you can show appreciation to the person who gave you your WWE contracts. And then Cactus Jack is like, what? He turns around, and the Radicals beat him up. And this gets huge boos from the fans, because here we are. We were so happy to see the Radicals show up. They were just on SmackDown fighting against DX and Triple H. And now here they are aligning themselves with Triple H and DX and Stephanie McMahon. And what a blow to the WWE fans, because looking at it, it's like, oh, 4 fresh new good guys in the company, and nope, they're all gonna be bad guys. And at the time, we all knew how great Eddie Guerrero, Benoit, Saturn, and Malenko were. That's why there was so much hype for them to come into the company. I have Let's Plays on every single one, on every single member of the Radicals. I've actually done a Let's Play, so check those out. And I talk more about the Radicals and what that meant for WWF at the time and how big that was for them. But this plays a lot into the rise of Too Cool, because it sets up a 5-on-5 match that Triple H issues for Cactus Jack. He says, you and 4 partners of your choosing against me and X-Pac and the rest of the Radicals, because Eddie Guerrero can't wrestle because he's hurt. And so the whole night, it's like, well, who's going to team with Cactus Jack? Who is he going to get? And I remember watching it even then, not knowing, well, who's going to team up with Cactus Jack? Because he didn't really have any allegiances to anyone at that time. Cactus Jack was a much different character than Mankind, but even Mankind, the only one he had was The Rock, and they were friends for a little bit, and then they beat the crap out of each other for months after that. And The Rock, never really liked Mankind. And it's really funny because, as I was thinking that, of course, they go to an interview with The Rock, and The Rock says he's going to be one of the people teaming up with Cactus Jack. And it's very funny because if you go back and you watch that promo, The Rock gives a great promo about how he's going to be at the Big Show at No Way Out. He doesn't care who's going to win between The Rock or Cactus Jack, because at WrestleMania he's going to walk out champion regardless. But he decides, because Triple H is such a jerk, he's going to team up with Cactus Jack and face Triple H and the rest of everyone else. And Jerry Lawler real quick goes, oh no, not Rock and Sock again. And Jim Ross goes, well, it's not The Rock and Mankind, it's The Rock and Cactus Jack. So they reference Rock and Sock. And you remember, at the time, you got to remember, at the time, that the Rock and Sock connection they were only around for a little bit, but they left such a lasting impression. And where The Rock is due in a lot of parts due to his rivalry with Mankind. So to make a callback to that at the time was big, and you could see why the fans were so excited about that. And I remember being very excited about that too, to see The Rock and Cactus Jack, knowing their history. So you have their history, you have The Rock feuding with Triple H, Cactus Jack is feuding with Triple H. Now Cactus Jack is mad at the Radicals. The Radicals are in from WCW, but they're aligning themselves with Triple H. So you have all these things going in, and once we get to the main event, which is this 5-on-5, they haven't revealed who the other partners are going to be for Cactus Jack and The Rock. And it was such a well done episode, I think, in that sense, from the storytelling point, just building up to that match. They set up the main event in the beginning of the match, but they added mystery, they added drama to it throughout the night, slowly revealing, well, who is it going to be? And then it's The Rock, and it's like, oh, that's a big thing. And then they interview Cactus Jack, and Cactus Jack is like, well, I didn't ask The Rock for his help, but if he wants to volunteer, then that's fine by me. And we get to the match. DX and the Radicals come out. Then The Rock and Mankind Cactus Jack come out. And as soon as they hit the ring, because they just walk out and they walk right to the ring, they're about to get into it, the lights sort of go off and Too Cool's music starts playing. And I remember watching this as a kid, like, what? It's gonna be Too Cool helping The Rock and Sock? And the way they set it up too, they set it up in such a way that it wasn't obvious if The Rock and Cactus Jack had asked Too Cool, you know? So it almost is this like Too Cool just kind of inserted themselves because they're this good guy tag team, and like, you know what? We're gonna help out The Rock and Sock. And I've talked about this in other tag team Let's Plays and in other Let's Plays in general. You know, that I love it when they mix people who aren't necessarily main event players, but they put them in the main event because it ties the whole, you know, quote unquote universe. You know, that's what WWE uses now. They use the term universe, but it ties all that together. You know, realistically, Rikishi, Grandmaster Sexay, and Scotty 2 Hotty shouldn't be getting involved in the beef that Cactus Jack and The Rock has. But realistically, if you think about it, they would, because they're part of the entire roster that has been fed up with the McMahon Helmsley regime. It's little things like that, little details like that I feel like you saw a lot in the storytelling in Raw. And you know, I'm not saying it was all perfect. You know, on that very same episode of Raw, you had you know, the continuing storyline of Mark Henry and Mae Young that would eventually lead to Mae Young giving birth to a rubber glove. You had the continuing storyline of Nurse BB, you know, and Bubba Ray wanting to put women through table. So, you know, and going back and looking at it, there was still a lot of like, okay, this would definitely not happen now anymore. But for the main event storylines, for the main event build up, a lot of it was really solid and really good. And I think this was a great example of how they tied so many things together, because now you have this 5-on-5 match, and I always remembered it being very fun and very exciting. And I remember the crowd, the memory I always had was the crowd losing their mind the entire match, because they were so excited that Too Cool was there with The Rock and Cactus Jack. And going back and watching the match leading, you know, to do this episode, fortunately my memory served me correct. The crowd was out of control. They were so excited to see Too Cool with The Rock and Sock, and looking at the whole, again, the history of so far Too Cool's sort of, you know, rocket rise to the top. It was just 2 weeks removed from the Royal Rumble, where they had that spot in the Rumble that everyone loved. You know, now here they are teaming with The Rock and Cactus Jack against Triple H, against the Radicals. They are just automatically inserted into a Raw main event, all because of their dancing, all because of, you know, their chemistry, all because of WWE was so quick to realize that the fans were reacting so positively to them that they were like, you know what, let's throw them in, let's see what happens. And, I mean, maybe that was the logic. I don't know. That's the way I'm looking at it from sort of that perspective now. But that led into a lot of other things, later on. The match itself is fun. It's exciting. The crowd really helps make the match. But still, it's Benoit, it's Malenko, it's Perry Saturn, it's Cactus Jack, The Rock, Triple H, Rikishi. And, it's too cool. They do their part. They play their part. The end looked a little wonky. Like the spot looked a little wonky, but Triple H, and Benoit basically, beat up Brian Christopher, and then it looks like Cactus Jack was like making the save, but he forgot maybe that was the finish. So like it was a little wonky, that ending, but then they still brawl after that, and then the lights go off again, but the Titantron entrance is lit up, and Paul Bearer comes out, and he's dressed in red, and Kane's music hits, and Kane is back. So now Kane is coming out with a returning Paul Bearer, and this makes sense because Kane recently was involved with a feud / partnership with X-Pac, and then X-Pac and Tori recently betrayed him, and I believe I talked about it in my X-Pac Let's Plays. But this also makes sense for Kane, and like it's another big reveal. So like, just throughout this whole, from start to finish, if you look at the beginning of the episode to the end of the episode, how this particular 5-on-5 match was constructed, from a storytelling point, it was so solid and had so many twists and turns and surprises within these 2 hours of, Raw, that I think that's why it always stood out as being special to me. And also because it was also very unexpected, to see Too Cool run out to help The Rock and Cactus Jack. That would be like, let's try to put it in modern day WWE terms. That would be like, I don't know, like the Shield, they need partners, right? So it's like, and it's not Jason Jordan coming out to the rescue, it's like, imagine if like the Shield need allies, and, I don't know. Well, now it's it's kind of hard to put it in a modern day context because I'm trying to think of a tag team or wrestlers that are over with the crowd but they're not completely. That's like, all right. So let's say Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn challenge AJ Styles to a match, and they're like, AJ Styles, you and a partner of your choosing. And then AJ Styles is like, you know what? I'm not going to choose anyone because I beat you guys in a handicap match before, and I'm going to do it again because I'm AJ Styles. And that was my terrible AJ Styles impression. And Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn come out, and AJ Styles comes out, and then Ty Dillinger comes out, or Rusev comes out. People who are getting strong reactions from the fans, but they're not really being put in a main event level. And then all of a sudden, unexpectedly, they're the ones that come out. They don't really have a relationship with AJ. They don't really have too much of a history with AJ, but it's like kind of like a cool thing. It's almost like when Roman Reigns and Bray Wyatt teamed up. What was it, 2 years ago now, briefly, before Bray Wyatt got hurt and then came back, and they completely act like it never happened. But like that match had sort of the same energy, I think, that this match had. And it was always one of my favorite Raw matches growing up, and even to this day, which is again part of the reason why I wanted to choose Too Cool, because I wanted to talk about how that match was executed, and again, what we could learn from taking all these different stories and interweaving them, and interweaving a tag team into them, because I think that helps go back to the tag team division and helps build back the tag team division, because after this, Too Cool started their feud with the Radicals. Now, No Way Out, it would be the Radicals against Too Cool, and this is their big pay-per-view debut, and the Radicals would lose. And as a wrestling fan, I was very disappointed that the Radicals lost their pay-per-view debut against Too Cool, but I also saw why. Looking back on it and knowing what I know now, I know why that was done, even though I might necessarily agree with it. But that just goes to show you how hot the momentum for Too Cool was following that, because they beat the Radicals, and then they go on kind of like a winning streak. At WrestleMania they win. China and Too Cool beat the Radicals again, and then Rikishi teams up with Kane again, a callback to this moment, this match, where Kane came out and they beat X-Pac and Road Dogg. So by like proximity, Rikishi and Too Cool get inserted in a lot of the major feuds that are going on with the Radicals, with DX, and that keeps them sort of close to the main event spotlight. At Backlash, Dean Malenko and Scotty 2 Hotty have a light heavyweight championship match that is really good. They had a very brief but entertaining feud over the light heavyweight championship, and I thought that match was actually pretty good. At Insurrection 2000, Too Cool beat the Radicals again, and then Rikishi teams up with the Big Show, and Big Show's very infamous Show-Kishi get up, and again it just goes to show you how popular Rikishi was at that time with Too Cool, with him dancing, that even now he's getting Big Show to dance with him and do Show-Kishi, and they beat the Dudley Boys, who the Dudley Boys were like, again, at the time, a legitimate threat in the tag team division. So they're using the popularity of Too Cool to establish them as people in the tag team division that should be a force to reckon with, and it's really because they have Rikishi. So you see Rikishi picking up a lot of the major wins for the team. Judgment Day, Too Cool are now involved in a feud with Team ECK, Edge and Christian and Kurt Angle, and they have a match there at Judgment Day in a 6-man tag that Too Cool wins again because of Rikishi, and this leads into the King of the Ring, and also leads into Too Cool winning the tag team titles off of Edge and Christian, putting the titles up at King of the Ring. King of the Ring is a 4-way match. It's Edge and Christian, Too Cool, the Hardy Boys, and TNA in a Fatal 4 elimination match, while Rikishi is in the King of the Ring, and he makes it all the way to the finals against Kurt Angle. So it's just like a solid 6 months or so, 6-7 months of just riding the wave of popularity of Too Cool and just actually putting them in feuds that matter, putting them in important stuff. And they're not like coming out on top all the time, but they're serving their role, and they're doing it very well, and they're keeping the crowd entertained, and they're making the bad guys, they're making the heels look even better, because people are responding so well to them dancing, to them having fun, so that when you have, and it's actually really funny that I'm facing Kurt Angle and Edge right now, but when you have like Kurt Angle and Edge and Christian beating up on Too Cool, when you have the Radicals beating up on Too Cool, it makes you want to cheer for them even more. And again, you're not cheering them because they're great wrestlers or because they're the best tag team in the world and they should be. You're cheering them because you like them. You like them. They're funny. They're entertaining, and they're not doing anything wrong. They're not hurting anyone. But it was good that they had Rikishi as their muscle, which is another thing I always talked about in my tag team Let's Plays. That I'm a big fan of the 3-man tag teams. I'm a big fan of the three team units, because usually that third person always adds a little bit something that the tag team itself can't quite accomplish. The momentum kept riding with Rikishi. After the King of the Ring, he would have that great match with Val Venus, that cage match for the IC Championship, where Rikishi jumped off the top of the cage, and then at SummerSlam, they would suffer their first, major, I would say, pay-per-view loss in like just a straight-up match, where as a unit, where Right to Censor beat Too Cool in a 6-man match. So that right there, for me, the way I interpreted it was that, they were trying to get Right to Censor over, so they had him beat Too Cool, because Too Cool as a 3-person team had a really good win-loss record. They didn't lose a lot as a 3-person team. They rarely lost, on pay-per-view. And they only lost like maybe in a 5-way or 4-way, So, but we go to Unforgiven, and Rikishi gets spotlighted, taking on Eddie Guerrero again. Again, still drawing from that radical sort of rivalry. But it was after SummerSlam that Too Cool started to cool down, if you will, no pun intended. But that's when we got into the whole, well, who hit Austin with the car? Austin was making his comeback, and he comes back on on October 9th of Raw. Austin comes out saying he knows who it is that ran him over, and it was revealed to be Rikishi. And it was a big shock to everyone, I think, myself included. To this day, it's still questioned, and I talked about it in the Rikishi Let's Play. So, if you want to listen to me further elaborate on that, obviously, I don't think it was the best choice in retrospect. Even at the time, I was like, okay, well, let's see where this goes. But it didn't end up going anywhere, and I think it hurt Rikishi's career, and it also hurt Too Cool's career. But after that, so Rikishi, obviously, he turns heel, and then he turns on Too Cool, which is like, aw, it's messed up. But now, Too Cool has lost the thing that kind of was making them work, because as much as I liked Too Cool, I think they only worked with Rikishi. When you take Rikishi out of the equation, it doesn't fall flat, but there's nothing underneath the surface there. There's nothing that's going on that makes you take a little bit more of a serious look. And Rikishi was that serious look, because he was a threat in the ring. And even going back and watching the Too Cool matches with Rikishi and watching even the 5-on, like, Rikishi was just so good in the ring. I think he's really underrated as to how good of a worker he was in the ring. And I think that helped a lot. And, when he came out, people loved him because, again, he was a big guy that moved faster than what you would have thought as a big guy. He had that great super kick, and then also he was revealing his butt the whole time, but he would do, his bonsai drop, he would do his stink face. He had a lot of moves that were very over with the crowd, to go along with Too Cool's moves that were over with the crowd, to go along with the worm, where everyone would chant and everyone would clap when they would clap, and Brian Christopher doing his like in-place running man and his hip-hop drop, and the goggles, just everything about it just all worked together. But once they took out Rikishi, and then it became a little awkward, because Rikishi was now inserted into this main event as the person who ran over Stone Cold, but it didn't go anywhere with him. He got thrown off the Hell in a Cell by The Undertaker, and, flash forward to WrestleMania, and Rikishi's not involved in the world title picture. Rikishi's not involved with all that stuff that was going on. So it was all very weird. I think originally the plan was for it to just be Triple H, but they probably just wanted it to be a little bit more shocking than that. I think it was like Triple H or Shawn Michaels or like a few other people were like kind of floated around to be the person to hit him with the car. I don't know. It's very weird. It's almost as if like they knew they had to write Stone Cold off because of his neck injury. So they were like, well, we'll have him get hit by a car. And then it was like, well, who's driving the car? And they were like, we'll figure it out when we get there. And as things went on and things changed, they probably didn't know what to do, and at the last minute they put Rikishi in. Because if you look back, Survivor Series 99, Rikishi was nowhere to be seen, and Too Cool were nowhere near as popular as they were when it finally got revealed, in October, that Rikishi was the one who hit him. So it definitely seemed like a last minute, maybe not a last minute adjustment, but definitely something that was added on at the end as opposed to really well thought out. And I thought Rikishi ended up having like a good mini feud with The Rock and had a good match with Austin, good match with The Rock. He played his part in the Hell in a Cell, and I was expecting to see more of him, but they didn't use him more. And then Too Cool's luck sort of kind of ran out. They just started getting featured less after that, and the brief times you saw them, it didn't have the same you know, it didn't have the same, special feel that it had when Rikishi was there. And they also didn't really, they just kind of took the betrayal on their chin, and then that's it. They didn't do anything about it. Rikishi, like, turned on them, beat them up a little bit, and then that's it. We didn't see the, Too Cool sort of, like, further chase it or try to help out The Rock against Rikishi and stuff like that. We didn't see them inserted in there anymore, and Scotty 2 Hotty would actually get hurt at the beginning of 2001, so that would take him out of action. And then Brian Christopher, actually, he got released from the WWE that same year because he was transporting drugs between the Canadian and American border illegally. He got caught with some illegal drugs that he wasn't supposed to be moving over the border, and WWE released him. And that pretty much ended Too Cool. The Rikishi turning heel, Scotty 2 Hotty getting injured, Brian Christopher getting released. That was it. Too Cool was done. And it's kind of like a whimper on something that became so popular so fast that to this day, people, big fans of the Attitude Era, you ask them, like, hey, you remember Too Cool? Like, oh, yeah, I remember Too Cool. And I bet a lot of people can still talk about all the things they did, and even in, if you want to put it into wrestling game terms, even people who played WWF No Mercy, we've all tried to do the worm. We've all tried to do the worm with Scotty 2 Hotty, much like how, when you play as The Rock, you try to do the people's elbow. And that's another thing, too. Like, they put the worm in the game. Like, that's just like a testament to how detailed this game really was for its time, that they were able to make something like the worm work. You set it up with your special taunt, and then you do the taunt, and then right at the end, you just hit your move, like your regular B hit, and it's like you did the worm. And that's like so cool that they had it, again, no pun intended, but that it really was cool that they had that in the game. It made them fun to play as, because again, when, like, let's say if I do play as Too Cool, and I definitely played as Too Cool a lot more than I played as Too Much in WrestleMania 2000. And I don't know why I missed that leg drop. You would think you would have a little bit more distance on it. But it definitely made you want to play as them. Again, not because, like, oh, they're such a great tag team, they're like one of the best, but they're just fun and silly to play as. They're like kind of my pick. Like, if I'm going to do a tag team match against someone, they're kind of my pick if I want to, like, kind of like make the other player sort of feel like embarrassed that they're losing, because they have so many dance moves. So after every little thing, you'll do dances, and that just kind of like pisses your opponent off, because it's like funny, it's like cocky, it's arrogant, but it's silly. But it's also like you can't get too upset because it's Too Cool and you like seeing the dance animations in the game. I don't know, I like seeing the dance animations in the game. So it's just, yeah, it's kind of, and it's funny because, like, No Mercy came out in November of 2000, and right around Survivor Series was coming out, and that's when The Rock was having his match with Rikishi. Too Cool wasn't on the card. Too Cool hadn't been on a match since No Mercy, and No Mercy, previously before that, they were involved in the gauntlet match, the tag team gauntlet match, where they didn't really do anything. They got eliminated pretty early. So you could tell that, like, this game was definitely being in development right at the height of Too Cool's popularity that year. And they were probably like, oh, we gotta get this stuff in. We gotta put all these taunts. We gotta put all these dance moves. And then when the game gets released, Too Cool's pretty much done. Too Cool is gone. It's almost like the Ravens flock in WCW NW Revenge. WCW and the Revenge, that whole year when it was being developed, Ravens flock appeared, they debuted, they were riding this sort of like little wave of popularity, they were getting over, and then all of a sudden the game comes out, and by the time the game comes out, they're already disbanded. So it's interesting, game development is a funny thing, especially, with sports games or wrestling games. Here they go, coming out with the tag team titles. And dancing. Look how great that tag team entrance is. Really makes me, wish that they kept the tag team entrances. But now I'm facing Shane and X-Pac because, of course, because this is the WWF Championship path. But yeah, looking back on, the legacy of Too Cool, it was just such a small moment again of time in WWF that, it probably wouldn't work now. Maybe it would. Who knows? I think you gotta be another kind of silly. I think you gotta be another kind of silly to get over with the fans. Two white guys pretending, dressing overtly hip hop and pretending to be really good at breakdancing, and they're not. Would probably be funny for a little bit, but it definitely wouldn't have been as over as it was back then. Late 90s, early 2000. Scotty 2 Hotty and Rikishi would actually get back together a little bit in late 2003, long after Rikishi was done being heel. But again, it wasn't the same even then. Even like 3 years later, it wasn't the same when Scotty 2 Hotty and Rikishi came back and they were doing their whole thing, and they even won the WWE tag titles, the titles that are now the Raw titles. They even won that briefly. But it didn't last. And funny enough, like, Grandmaster Sexy was actually like back in the company at that time too, but this was when they first did the brand split. So Brian Christopher was on Raw and they reunited Too Cool on SmackDown, but Brian Christopher wasn't a part of it. And then Brian Christopher would get released again, and then Scotty 2 Hotty would get released, and Rikishi would get released, and they will all be gone from the company about by 2004. And we wouldn't see an official Too Cool reunion, like an official all three members, until 2014, the Raw Old School anniversary show. So 13, 14 years later, because if you say they disbanded in October of 2000, and now we're in January of 2004, so that's a little over 13 years. Which is crazy to think about, but people still remember them. They hadn't done anything in 13 years together, and people still wrestling. And they came out and they wrestled 3MB. Again, you gotta be a little bit kind of a silly to get over, and 3MB was kind of like an example of that. They obviously didn't really get over, but you look at the members of 3MB now, and I think they're all doing pretty well for themselves. Obviously, Heath Slater's doing the best. But that's just crazy that 13 years. And then there was a little bit of controversy, actually, because Rikishi ended up getting inducted into the Hall of Fame after that. But he didn't name drop Brian Christopher and Scotty 2 Hotty. And Scotty 2 Hotty actually tweeted about it. And he was kind of upset that, he didn't reference their names. And Rikishi, he did the whole Too Cool dance with his sons, the Usos. And, who knows what happened? I mean, they were together on that Raw show, but who knows what happened after that, and who knows what happened to the Hall of Fame. And, I don't like to lead too much into it because, again, you never know what's going on behind the scenes and whatever personal issues these people have with each other, there's only so much we're ever going to know being an audience member. But I like to look back at Too Cool because, and the reason why I wanted to do them for this, because that moment where they had that 5-on-5 tag team match, it was another example of lightning in a bottle. And I'm not comparing lightning in a bottle, with the Hardys and Edge and Christian and the Dudleys, but I just think that when you have anyone on your roster who's getting a large reaction from the crowd, you have to use it. You have to use it as best as you can. But I also think it's a perfect example of how you can mess that up, and I think the Rikishi thing, looking back on it, and even at the time, you could tell, oh, this isn't gonna work. It's almost as if it would have been more interesting to see how long they could have rode that Too Cool wave, and then maybe kept them together in a different way, and then have maybe, if you wanted to eventually turn Rikishi on them, because he was always the one holding together, maybe have it develop a little bit more organically. But, you gotta just learn from the past mistakes. That's what this whole tag team championship Let's Play has been about. And here we go. One more dance with Too Cool. Gonna show it off. I didn't want to do every single match I won with them to dance, because then this this episode would have been way too long. It's long enough as it is. But that's pretty much it. Again, this was done when I still had all my data on WWF No Mercy before I lost everything. So I am gonna show you after this. I'm gonna show you me getting 100% in the tag team championship, and yeah, now it's on. I got 2 more championships to go for my Let's Play series. I have the Women's Championship, which is next, and then I have the WWF World Championship, which is going to be the last one, and then I am done unlocking every single path. Technically, can't show it all on one cartridge because all the data got erased, but it's all up on my YouTube channel, so you all know I did it, and I'll just do it again on my EverDrive. But here we go. Too Cool coming out as the tag team champions. Look at them. I just look at the dancing, the animation, like how they were able to do the waves and all that. It's so funny. I like it. I like it a lot. They're matching outfits. It's just silly. The hairstyle they specifically made for Scotty 2 Hotty so that it could fit over the hat, and like that hat that they specifically made to fit over that hair. It's just, there's so much things in this game specifically for Too Cool. It's kind of nuts to think about. But here I go, just showing you memories when I used to have everything unlocked. The tag team, the Intercontinental, European. But there you go. Stay tuned for the Women's Championship next. I'm very excited. It's going to be a short championship path, but I'm very excited to talk about women's wrestling. And then I'm very excited to get to the World Championship. So thank you for watching. You know what to do. You've been on YouTube before. Like, comment, subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you check out all my other stuff on my channel. I am Be Better Gamer. As always, until next time, keep watching all the wrestling.